This is Project Reservoirs podcast. I have some special guests here today. Let's introduce them. We have to my left, you are?
My name is Lydia. I'm part of the Snail Samurais.
Snail Samurai. What do you guys do on the Snail Samurai? Wait. Before you tell me, who else do we have
There's more
here?
people here. Hi. Okay, so my name is Michaela Garrett. I'm also on the Snail Samurai. And then we have our other two people here.
My name is Carla.
My name is Sajud.
And we're missing one of our teammates, Anel.
You see that? You like that? That's my samurai sword effect.
All right.
All right, so Snail Samurais, what the heck do you guys actually do? You actually like fight snails or something? That's like a strange name.
I wish.
No, Mr. O.D., he actually went to the reservoir and he found a Chinese mystery snail, and he initially...
Ooh,
okay.
mystery.
And then he thought, oh no, the reservoir is ruined.
Yeah, because they eat other things.
Yeah, they supposedly compete with native snails and native plants for food and habitat. So then he created a post on Instagram for multiple people, including students, to see, and I reached out to him and questioned him about the snail that he found.
Cool, interesting. So why Chinese mystery still? What the heck is a Chinese snail doing here in Jersey City? What's that all about?
They say that most likely that they were dumped. So like from like food establishments, like they could have been.
They're foreign snails. They're mostly found in East Asia, and foreign snails are brought here or imported here from food sources, restaurants, farmers, you know.
Cool. Why are they called mystery snail? Why mystery? What's this mystery? Is it a mystery because we don't know where they came from, or
no?
is it
That's just the given name, but to them, the names are Japanese mystery snail, Chinese mystery snail, and Oriental mystery snail.
Cool. Now, you said the reservoir, and some people, I mean, if you go to 28th school here in Jersey City, we don't know what we mean when we say the reservoir. But for those who might be listening that don't know, what we keep talking about, Project Reservoir. What is this reservoir you're talking about?
Reservoir is a...
Like, we know what a reservoir is, but, but why you guys could call it Project Reservoir? Like, what's that about?
Because we focus on nature, and the reservoir is a piece of nature that we have close to home.
Cool. So, like, you go there and you do, like, field studies and things like that?
Yes, for our projects, our multiple projects that we have had over the years since Project Reservoir has been created.
Sweet. Now, I hear a lot about this Mr. O'Donnell guy.
Yes.
He's the 8th grade teacher. He also teaches 7th grade science in PS 28.
He's also our mentor and other teams' mentors for Project
Reservoir.
Cool. We're going to have to get that funny-looking guy on a show in about... So stay tuned. We're going to pull Mr. O'Donnell in here in about another couple of minutes. But before we get to Mr. O'Donnell, let's talk to Carla here. So, Miss Carla, I had you back in 5th grade, correct?
Yes.
So, for those who don't know, Carla back in 5th grade was probably one of my number one students. Let's say top 5. It was probably actually top 5 right here in the flesh as we speak. So, Carla, what gave you an interest in not only mystery snails, but in Project Reservoir alone? Why did you want to be part of such the STEM-based teams?
Well, at first I didn't know what Project Reservoir was until one of the teams at the time, 8th grade team, I think it was called Anthro Savers, and I saw that they had their project, and I thought that it was a cool way to save the environment at the same time, getting like the community also into it, and how everybody can learn that certain species or some problems could be, I guess, in a way solved.
Absolutely. So I mean, that's what really it's about. From what I gather, and being one of the mentors myself, I think it's about young conservationists like yourself, people who want to help the environment, get a topic, and kind of you actually make a big difference. You'd be surprised what middle school kids can accomplish in a short amount of time. And before we get into Mr. O'Donnell here, let's talk to a little bit about. Oh, let's actually talk to Jude over here. Give Jude the mic. Give Jude the mic. Give Jude the mic. Jude's got the mic. Jude got the mic. All right, so this is Mr. Jude. How you doing there?
I'm good. How are you?
Cool. So I heard a little bit about the mystery snails. We're going to get into that a little bit more. But tell me a little bit about your role on the team for Snail Samurais.
So basically, I help Lydiath with the outreach. So
Stop right there for a second. Not to cut you off. Outreach. What do you mean, like outreach? What are you talking about?
So like social media and lesson plans for younger children. We do lessons for other kids, for other students.
Cool.
We teach them about the snails and invasive species and how you can't release them into the wild because they're domesticated.
So you guys go to different classrooms in Jersey City and teach them about, your topic.
Yep. That's basically what it is.
How's that experience? How do you like the experience of being a teacher? Do they all listen to you? Or do they say, "Can I go to the bathroom? Can I go to the bathroom?" Do they ask you that? Or?
I guess they're very like interested because we're kind of like the big kids, and it's like cool to be hanging out with the big kids.
Okay, so the cool big kids. But do you guys present to like your fellow peers, like 8th graders as well, or do you just go to the younger classes?
Yeah, actually, recently we presented to our fellow peers. We also did back in this summer, actually, we presented to the Honeywell Institute. Michaela and Lydia.
All right, just not to cut you off again, but you say Honeywell Institute. What is that, and who is that?
It's a institute for.
It's a internationally known institute. It's basically a school run around the world. I went on their Instagram profile once, and they had teachers in astronaut suits because of how well known they are. So they had a chance to meet with NASA. And
This Honeywell Institution.
yes. Mm-hmm.
That's cool. So, what's your next phase now? Like, I understand you guys just submitted to this Lexus Eco Challenge. I hear a lot about. This Lexus Eco Challenge, it's a pretty extensive project, and I know that you guys submitted. You guys have been working here pretty much early in the morning. I get here at school around. I get here early, like 7 o'clock, because I have to get a parking, because the parking here is atrocious in Jersey City. No shout-outs to the parking authority. Boo. If you work for the parking authority, get a new job. Anyway, I got to get here early so I can get in this parking lot, and I'll tell you what, very impressive. I see you young ladies here very, very early, around 7 o'clock, 7:15. So you must have done a lot of hard work on this project.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we have. We met in the library a couple of times at 7 o'clock with Miss Yabut, who is another mentor of Project Reservoir with us. She
Shut
helps
up,
us.
Miss Shabut.
She helps us edit our slides. She helps us add some things if needed. And
Let's talk about all your
yes.
coaches real quick so we can give them the proper respect due to them. So we have Mr. O'Donnell. We're going to meet in about a couple minutes. We just give a shout out to Miss Shabut, who is amazing at what she does. Who else do we have?
Mr. Natus, he helped us with one of our experiments known as the snail filter, in which we made a filter. It's a tank of snails, and we flow waters from the turtle tank into the snail tank and then back into the turtle tank, because there's studies that show that snails filter the water and clear it up. So it's a water clarity test that we conducted, and he helped us with the tubing and the piping of it.
Shout out to Miss Anais. Miss Anais is like MacGyver, George Washington, Santa Claus, Einstein, all put together in one. This guy's pretty amazing. He does a little bit of everything. He also helps all of my young 6th grade teams pretty much with everything. So this Project Reservoir would not exist without Mr. Natus in the house. So we give our love where it deserves, and shout out to Miss Anais. All right, so Snail Samurai, I got a little bit of a background. I see tanks, okay, and I go into Mr. O'Donnell's room across the hall, and you have a number of tanks. You have about, 12 tanks?
6.
6?
No, we have
You're like
7.
7.
7 and a few more, but the 6 tanks in the bottom shelf, those are for It was for a consumption experiment, mostly done by Carla and Sajud, and another tank for the reproduction study that we did, mostly done by Carlin Sajud, and there's 6 more on the top shelf
Data
above.
queens.
Yes, there's 6 more tanks above, and those are for
All right, so let's
just a
just talk
happy
about
home.
that real quick. You said the consumption, and what was the other
The
thing?
reproduction.
What are you testing with the amount of how fast they reproduce and things like that?
Yeah,
or-
Yes,
how fast
because
they're reproducing.
They reproduce at an alarming rate, and which causes them to outnumber the native snails.
Cool, Carla. So you were kind of running point on that data research. Can you give our listeners a little bit of background about it?
So what we had was we had a tank in which we had placed 47 snails in there, and we wanted to know in 15 days how many new snails would be in the tank. Since we knew that they would reproduce at a fast rate, we just wanted to know specifically the numbers. And so in 15 days, we had found 30 new snails, counting the babies and the egg pouches that in which they had.
Wow.
So we doubled that number for a month, because the babies still can't reproduce. So it was just probably just doubled it, since the adults would probably reproduce at the same rate they did in the first 15 days. So it would be in total 60 new snails in a month. So 60 over 47, 60 being the new snails and 47 being the original snails.
Wow, that's pretty wild. So let me ask you something. Are you trying to figure out a way to reduce that, or you're just trying to understand these snails a little bit better?
Well, it's actually both of them. So we did research on the rates, and we found that they would reproduce at a really fast rate. And we wanted to know for ourselves, like, the actual data. And we also wanted to know what we're working with, since we want to reduce this number as much as we can. But we wanted to know what we're working with, because since we knew there was a lot of them, we weren't specifically sure on how much they were gonna be in number. So we just wanted to get an idea of how many there would be in, let's just say, a year, and how we could work on fixing that problem and lowering it to some amount of numbers.
That's pretty extensive right there. That's like collegiate level stuff you guys are doing. That's pretty impressive.
Thank
So
you.
that was the first data study you did, the reproduction. What was the other one, consumption?
Yes, consumption, and we had a water clarity test. We did both qualitative and quantitative experiments.
Oh, cool. Let's talk a little bit about the consumption. So, Carla, if you want to run point on that, go ahead.
Okay.
Tell me what happened with that.
So we had 6 tanks in which we had cleaned them out, so it was ready for snails to be placed in. We had also put water in each of them, around the same amount, and we had 125 snails, and we had divided it by the 6 tanks. So there is about 25 snails, there is 25 snails in each tank, and we put macroalgae on 2 of the tanks. Macroalgae meaning that is visible, since you usually hear microalgae, which is visible under a microscope. So macroalgae can be visible under the naked eye. And we had the other 4 with milfoil. And these 2 plants were native to the reservoir, in which we wanted to see if they were able to eat it, since it was known that they ate a lot of the native plants that was in the reservoir and other bodies of water. And so we conducted this study to see if they were able to eat it, and if they were, how fast.
So, folks, do you understand the level of science that goes on here at PS28 school? If you don't feel bad. I don't either, and I'm a science teacher. Believe that. I'm just kidding. But these girls have been working extremely hard. That's a little taste of what the Snail Samurais are doing here at PS28 school at Project Reservoir team. That's our 8th grade team. You're going to certainly hear a lot more from them on this podcast. This is just the first podcast, trying to get these girls warmed up for their first live podcast. They'll be doing a couple more, so you can kind of get updated on what they're doing on a day-to-day. So before we continue on, and before we close this session, we have a very special guest here, folks. We have
The one and only.
the one and only, the man who always has the master plan, the man who has more commitment than anybody you probably will ever meet. He's very funny looking, though. And it's lucky it's a podcast. You can't see his funny looking face. I'm just kidding. He is not only my friend, but our fearless leader here of Project Reservoir, Mr. O'Donnell. All right, Odie, how you doing today, sir?
Very good. Thanks for that wonderful intro.
Yes, you know it. You know I always give you the best intros, my friend. All right, so Mr. O'Donnell, you were pretty much the CEO, CFO, guru, the George Washington of Project Reservoir, so to speak. So before we get into this Snail Samurais, the team that you're the mentor of and advisor, let's talk a little bit about the history of Project Reservoir, where you came up with the idea, and let's go.
All right, so this is going to be somewhat of a consolidated story.
Yeah, give us like a condensed, like a,
right.
Quick.
All right, so we're going back 2011, I believe, and actually you were with me. So our science department we won an Intel award.
See how I set him up for that? I was with him. I knew all about this. I was just setting him up. I threw him a nice little a set.
So we were finalists in a national Intel award, and we were actually in Washington, D.C., and I believe that was Dr. Elder's first year with us. And I had a trout in the classroom. It's a program still run by the state, so check that out if you're a science teacher listening to this and you want to incorporate some trout. And we needed basically a home for them to go. And Dr. Elder suggested the reservoir. And I had no idea that the reservoir even existed. I've been in Jersey City my whole life, but I grew up in Greenville, and I rarely came to the Heights.
Shout out to Greenville.
Yep. And
Stegman.
So it was, unfamiliar to me that we had this resource in the Heights. And you growing up in the Heights, you kind of knew about it already. So Dr. Elder put us in contact with Vinny and Stevie of the Alliance, and they came to the school and they met with us, and they were really ecstatic that a school wanted to kind of partner with them, and that was always their vision, to incorporate kids into the reservoir and the future of the reservoir, because they understood, what a true learning tool it could be.
Sorry about that. We got our silly girls behind us, taking some funny Snapchat filters of us on the mic here. So,
things kind of snowballed from there. We went there with their help, and we connected a certain class, a fourth grade class at the time. And so we had a fourth grade class and a sixth grade class mentoring them, and we had a lot of teachers on the project. And that fourth grade class, unfortunately, kind of split up. With many of them joining Project Reservoir down the road. But that sixth grade class in 2011 decided to continue in 2012 to become what we call Project Reservoir. Those kids now are freshmen in college. And that year we won the Disney Planet Challenge. We were the last middle school to win that award. Unfortunately, that does not exist anymore.
Isn't that the time you got real scared when Minnie came out? You ran into and huddled and said, "No."
Might have been.
Disney Planet Challenge was an awesome trip. I was lucky to be part of that as well. Be invited to go to help volunteer. It was really cool experience for that. Awesome. So we'll talk a little bit more about the history for sure. How many teams have we had in Project Reservoir since 2011? An approximate. I know it's hard to kind of.
Probably in the 30s, I would say like high 30s or so.
High 30s, that's pretty impressive. So, Project Reservoir here, just so because the listeners might not know, what are like the grade levels and like how do you get into Project Reservoir?
So how it works, after we had that first 8th grade class graduate, we wanted to kind of continue it, and at that point for a few years it was just kind of an 8th grade thing. So they actually developed the criteria for selecting the next generation. And they did that by creating a general assessment, based on kids' interest and skills and experience with...
The general assessment, what do you mean? They came up with what,
like a written assessment for kids to take. So we had an after-school meeting for potential kids that were interested. And then those kids came in, they took the test, which was then... the names were all blacked out by Monsieur Boot. And then the kids actually... scored it based on a rubric they created, and they were actually the selectors for the next generation of the class, and we've continued that trend until today. So students select students.
That's awesome. I was just going to say something like that. Students select students. That's pretty impressive. So basically the ball's in their court. They have control of the students.
Yes.
Excelente. I like that. All right, so we have a little bit of background about Project Reservoir, but for like listeners out there, our young listeners who may want to be part of Project Reservoir next year or the year after that, it is a middle school program, so I know it starts 6th, 7th, and 8th. But what do you think is the most important skill set a member should have? Like, if you said, listen, here's the best thing to have to be part of one of our teams, what skill set do you think that would be?
Just like in the classroom and anything else we do here, I think the biggest attribute a potential interested kid could have is just the ability to work hard. And, with hard work, you get what you want. And what you put into something is usually the outcome, that precedes it. So that's always how I do things and how we do things here. And
Get out what you put in. I tell my students that all the time.
And the kids understand that. I mean, you heard what the girls said. They're not in front of any scripts. They don't have computers in front of them. They just
This is all right off the cuff, guys. This is all improv. It's our first live podcast we're really doing here. Something we just started actually this year, 28, but why not add it? Absolutely. Cool. All right, so, OD, what's the next step now? All right, I know that you have a bunch of teams in 8th grade, but today's focus was the Snail Samurai, so let's just focus on them. So the Snail Samurais, I understand they competed in the Lexus Eco Challenge. They worked extremely hard. I know I saw them every morning. I saw them giving up lunches. I saw them staying here till 5 o'clock on a Friday. I saw them here till 7 o'clock on a Friday. I saw you at volleyball practice coaching the girls, and they're out on the bleachers working. So I know this team works hard. But what do you think is the next step for them in order to get to that next level?
I think they understand their mission, and their mission started with potentially eradicating these invasives from the site, and then during that process, based on what they said, they're kind of finding different potential positives that may be there. So I think they're doing some groundbreaking studies on the potential somewhat benefit of having these things. So I think that's something
Oh, so you think that
data.
these mystery snails can be beneficial? Because usually you hear invasive, and I'm thinking that's bad. Invaders, invasive, no bueno.
I think you have to look at the situation in which they're in. If it's an area that's being used for water, they're definitely going to go in there and clog intake pipes and cause a disaster. And for their application of where they may be, you need to kind of consider the status of of their level of threat. But I think in our contained system there, over time we may find that they, if we keep the numbers low or medium, they may actually be a benefit to the site. So that's something that I didn't initially believe, and kind of through the girls' work, we're kind of figuring that out. And if you wanted to eradicate them, you would have to deal with chemicals and copper, and it would just be a mess for the environment. So they're actually looking at ways with different partnerships with restaurants and such to potentially use our aquaculture facilities here, and we currently aquaculture tilapia.
Hold on. Hit the brakes, Mr. O'Donnell. Did you just tell me restaurants? Are you gonna these poor little snails? Are they just being set up for devouring?
Some might.
Oh!
Some might.
Bye snails.
That might be the outcome. I mean, these are that was Sierra Club. The Sierra Club actually released an article a few years back, and they were they were on the number 2 on the list of best invasives to consume.
Really? What's number 1?
Some type of crab. I don't know.
I love some crabs. All right, so cool. Because we're going to try to keep this to 30 minutes, so we got about 4 minutes left. Snail Samurai, can you come back in the room, even though you've been messing with us this whole time from behind the cut? But Mr. O.D., don't go anywhere, Mr. O.D. You're still with us. So we got about 4 minutes left before we end this podcast. So stay tuned, everybody, to these podcasts. You're going to see a bunch of them. We have a bunch of Reservoir teams that have laid down podcasts for you guys to listen to. Hopefully you listen, you learn a little bit. The one thing that stood out the most, what Mr. O'Donnell said, at least me as an educator, is he's learning a lot from these guys that he had no clue about these mystery snails, and that's what's happening with me. One team that was heavily focused on in the month of September was the Tick Busters, and I'll tell you what, I'm like an expert on ticks, not because of my research, but because of their research and what they brought to the table and what they've done. So, excellent job all around. Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell, for being super awesomely scientifically cool.
Thank you.
Carla, Snail Samurais, what's next for you girls? Like, what's your next phase right now? before we close this out?
So we still want to improve our outreach with the restaurants that we're planning to do. And we also are going to do something in the agriculture room where we're going to use some tanks. And we're not yet clear on what the steps are going to be there, but we definitely know that we're going to do something big there.
Excellent. Just a quick little shout out to our administrators, Dr. Elder, Ms. Matos, Mr. Baroto. Aquaculture Labs would not exist without administrators like that allowing Mr. O'Donnell, right? Correct? Am I right? About when I mean...
Yes, definitely. Though we started this with a donation from the Newark Museum back in the day, and they gave us 3 500 gallons.
Shout out to
And
Newark Museum.
Definitely. And I don't know if people listening to this, but just so you know, like, you know, we run here as a Jersey City Public School. You know, Project Reservoir is self-funded, so our kids support the kids of the future. So Snail Samurai's hard work, hopefully, in Lexus and other competitions, will give maybe 6th graders or 5th graders now an opportunity to buy supplies for their projects, just like they were able to do based on the success of our past teams. So, you know, maybe that's something that's not talked about too much, but it's all in house. You know, kids are teaching kids here, kids are selecting kids, and kids are supporting kids financially. It's pretty amazing.
It's impressive. You put a little hard work and love into anything, I think you can pretty much accomplish it. So, Carla, any last words for your listeners? Community outreach. Didn't mean to cut you off, but we just wanted to give a shout out to some of the administrators and talk about the Cockrell Lab. But
hold on, and back on that. So when we got those 500 gallons, I contacted Dr. Elder in the summer. I said, listen, we have an opportunity to bring in 3 500-gallon tanks, approximate value like $2,000 each. And she said, yeah, find a place for them. But they were too big for the classrooms. Can't get them in the doors. So we actually had to begin the conversion of our basement into basically a science wing. And Dr. Elder was super supportive of that. Our custodial staff, Charlie at the time, Patty, Pete, Margaret, Jen, Israel, Perfilio,
community,
just everybody.
It's a village, like they say, you know.
They went down there and were painting things for us. And Brown and I actually did some painting on the walls. The kids with the art department painted. And then the aquaculture lab, basically, with the success of that, Dr. Elder had the vision of actually converting our old shop room into a STEM lab. So not only do we have an aquaculture lab in the basement, but we also have a STEM lab down there too. So, like you said, it's just a strength of 28. You know, everyone's here for the kids.
Challengers for life. Represent maroon and gray all day. All right, cool. Mr. O'Donnell, always bound. I'm sure you're going to hear a lot from him. Again, this is our first one. We're still new at this podcast stuff, so, you know, bear with us. We're still learning in the process. Let's just close this out because we're getting over our mark here. Lydia, any last couple words to say to the audience?
Thank you for listening to this podcast, and hopefully you hear the next ones to come with us and other Project Reservoir teams.
Sweet. Carla?
Also follow us on Twitter and Instagram, Snail Samurai.
Nice.
Throw in the plugs.
You said Twitter. What's your Twitter handle?
It's like
It's _snails_samurai, and our picture is actually our team logo. So if you go follow us there, that'd be very courteous of you.
Same thing. Instagram, is it the same?
Instagram would be the same thing as well, and it has a picture of the reservoir that I put on as our profile picture.
Sweet. You girls are awesome. You were impressive in 5th grade, more impressive in 6th grade,
Thanks.
super impressive in 7th grade, and now 8th grade you're just dominant and rock
Thanks.
stars.
Thank
All right,
you.
thanks for listening to us. We're a little bit over. We're learning in the process. PS28 in the house, challenges in the house. Shout out Jersey City. Shout out Project Reservoir. Shout out funny looking Mr. O'Donnell. Shout out.
Beautiful Michaela.
Let me hop in here. Hey, shout out to Mr. Brown as well.
Oh yeah.
Hey, just
I
like
appreciate that.
he said, Carla, Lydia, and Michaela with Sir Jude and NL2, they started this journey, and actually Brown's wearing a Hydro Pro shirt on right
fake.
now, and I believe Carla,
Safe was the
Safe.
team,
Safe
honestly.
was
Carla,
the
you
team.
were on Hydro Pros or no?
Next
She was on
time.
Tire Rangers.
Next time I bring
Safe shirt.
I'm gonna bring back some of the old members of Safe. I'm gonna share the story with you later. But we're gonna share the story of when we visited the senior citizen home.
I remember that.
We'll say that for another day. We got a funny story for you
Wait,
guys.
so hold on. Back to the concept here. So the important thing is, you know, Brown started this journey with them when they were in 6th. And, you know, at the time they were kind of just learning things and understanding the process, and here they are today, you teaching all of you listening and teaching us and just working their butts off to make things happen. And it's cool how things have evolved where we actually we just submitted to Lexus both with one 6th grade team and one 8th grade team. And our 6th grade team is super strong, and so are the Snail Samurai.